Okay, hey everyone. My name's Frank. I am a co-founder of Humble Sea. Me and two friends started it. Everyone's business and business development, business community, so we'll just talk about business up here. That sounds so boring. I'm not going to talk about business. That's so lame. By trade, I'm a designer, brand designer, web designer, and product designer. So apps, hey Rebecca. And I also run a design studio. So I do both those things. They coexist very well. Just so I kind of understand who I'm talking to, who knows about Humble Sea? That's pretty good. Who came here because of the ridiculous title of this talk? Does everyone know the title of the talk? How we accidentally grew 785% during the pandemic. So, is everyone aware what clickbait is? Okay. As a designer, and then I started Humble Sea, I sort of had to learn marketing. So clickbait's like a huge part of marketing. What that title, 785%, what it implies is that our revenue grew 785%, which didn't. That'd be awesome. I'd be like on an island right now. That's ridiculous. There's truth in the title though. We technically grew 785% in our staff over the pandemic. So in March of 2020, we had 14 people on staff, and now we have 110. So that's how I did the math. So we did grow, and our revenue is up. I think it's up 300% since then. So that's pretty cool, but not 785% cool. So I like to kind of stretch that, or have you think whatever you want. I'm not really going to talk about growth, actually. I'm going to talk about pivoting and kind of our philosophy of pivoting as quickly as possible and being as creative as possible with our business model and not being attached to the business model that we started out with at Humble Sea. I'm going to talk about that because we're heading into some weird times, at least in my opinion, and there's inflation and there's some weird shit coming down the pike, and we all, I think, are going to have some pivots coming up here, and I think that's super important. So just to kind of go back to March 2020, also everyone be thinking of your questions. I'm going to talk for hopefully no longer than 15 minutes, and if you've got questions, we're just going to be chatting about it afterwards. So March 2020, we got shut down along with everything else, right? That was like the whole world. A lot of your businesses, your bankers, your tech company, whatever you are, you could have said, okay, cool, I'm gonna work from home. Like my design studio was fantastic. We all work from home anyway, it doesn't matter. No designers cared, none of our tech clients cared, nothing mattered about working from home or the pandemic, really, from that business model. But Humble Sea only does one thing, and they sell beer to people, in person. So we had a pretty big problem. Our actual business went from 100% down to 10% in terms of total addressable market, because what we were doing at the time is we were making beer and we were selling it in person to people over the counter via pints or cans, that kind of thing to go. Or we were distributing everywhere in California, and we were distributing to other bars and restaurants who sold beer to people in person over the counter. So the only thing we could do was to-go beer, which we kind of calculated at the time was about 10% of our market. So we went from 100% to 10%. And a lot of our friend breweries, they just kind of threw in the towel. They laid off everybody, friends throughout California and throughout the country. They laid off everybody. Their owners dropped their salary. They took on some of the government funding, and they just laid low. We kind of took the opposite approach. All of them are probably equally, lots of them are still in business. Lots of our friend breweries went out of business, which is pretty intense. A little sad, but hopefully they're doing cool things now. So we decided to try to figure it out and kind of force a solution. We looked around and we were like, okay, so we have 90% of our business to make up. How are we gonna make up at least half of it? And we had beer in the tanks at the time. And we were thinking, okay, we have beer in the tanks, which in our industry is equivalent to money. We were like, this stuff is sitting there. We're gonna sell this shit no matter what. We are going to get money in our coffers, at least for that stuff. And then we'll decide if we're ever gonna brew another batch of beer again. So we figured out alcohol and beverage control changed the laws so that we can ship direct to consumer in California during this pandemic, because they're like, hey, no one's coming into bars and restaurants, so you can ship everywhere. So we're like, okay, cool. What that means is we need to build an e-commerce site. I'm the only person at the brewery who actually knows how to use a computer. Luckily, I'm a designer as well who designs e-commerce websites. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna design this e-commerce website. We stayed up, it was me and my partner Lee, who's head of marketing. We also live together. Shout out to Yoso Wellness, by the way, her skin's amazing. And she's not in here, but yeah, Yoso Wellness is great. And yeah, so we just stayed up all night. We hacked together some piece of junk e-commerce website. So I know how to design and build e-commerce websites. I don't know how to run an e-commerce business. I've never sold anything online. Like, that's not something that is part of the things that I've done. So we built out the website, and then we announced on Monday, hey, California, we're shipping beer anywhere in California. We released the beer at noon on a Monday, and by 2 p.m. on that Monday, we had 500 orders in, and we had no idea what the hell we were doing. We had no idea even what to do with the orders. So I actually had it funneled into this shitty Google sheet that was like everyone's, like, the data was all messed up, and I think there's ways to interpret that data. I just had no idea how to do it. And we were like, okay, we have 500 orders. That means we have X amount of revenue right there that's sitting. All the beer in our tanks, we had to turn it off because all the beer in our tanks was already pre-sold before packaging, which is also a really bad idea because things can go wrong and there could be loss in packaging, that kind of thing. But at this point, I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're getting money, let's go. And so we had the revenue, cool. Next problem was figuring out how to print a shipping label. Never done that before. So we did a bunch of research, figured out how to print a shipping label. Then we were like, how do we ship beer? And so I Googled FedEx, I called FedEx, and they were like, we don't ship beer, that shit's illegal. No, it's not illegal anymore. It changed 2 days ago, and they're like, well, we're a huge company, we're not pivoting that fast. UPS, same thing. So GLS is a wine shipper, global logistics solution, wine shipper up and down, they only ship on the West Coast. We hit them up, and they were like, yeah, we'll drop off beer. It's the same as wine, right? They didn't even know the rules because the rules were new and they were sort of made up. And ABC, alcohol beverage control, kind of made this stuff up to increase their revenue because they were, the whole thing. Rebecca knows what I'm talking about. I do. Which I'm stoked on. Thank you for that whole change. So then we had to figure out how, we had our shipping carrier done. Then we had to figure out how to actually pack the boxes, which we had never done before either. So we were taking materials and supplies from the brew house and we were recycling it and we were packing boxes, and we had our bar staff do that because we had no bar, and we were it was the worst packaging line. It was the worst assembly line ever. It was unbelievable. It was dirty and people were dropping things, and it was just this is really bad, but this is all we had. And we didn't want to let go of a bunch of people, and we wanted to just keep trucking if we could and just see how this thing would work. So 500 orders of beer, by the way, is not 500 cans of beer. These were, around 1 case of beer per order. So it was 10 pallets of beer. So 10 pallets, 6 feet high, is roughly the size of this floor area. So if you're thinking about liquid volume, we could fill up this room and be at our chest of actual beer. So that's what we had to process by hand, and then palletize, and then get in a truck somehow, and then they would have to depalletize it and get it to people's doors. So it was a serious amount of thing that came in 2 hours. So as soon as we figured out, we can go with GLS, we started packing boxes, and it took us 11 minutes per box is what we were timing. So we were like, this is really bad. 500 times 11 is a huge amount of math that we don't have time for. So we called in David Dennis, who, if everyone doesn't know David Dennis, he's a Microsoft guru guy, but more importantly, he owns Ventana surfboards. And we were like, David, I know you don't pack boxes, but you're probably smarter than us with supply chain logistics and building out operations. So he came and checked out our lines, and he was like, okay, just do what every other factory in the world does, which is each person has an individual job. So we got our packing, instead of, before we were going like this, we were like, okay, reading an order. Okay, we got 2 4-pack socks and sandals, 2 4-packs of Penelope, couple Paisleys, got it, okay. one person would walk over to the pile of socks and sandals, another to Penelope Pilsner, and you'd like pack it yourself, and you'd look at it, and you would do this, and you would tape it, and you put the thing, and that was 11 minutes, like per box. It was terrible. So once we dialed that in, we got it to under a minute per box, which was a huge change, obviously. And then we just kept releasing beer week after week. And the cool thing is we're lucky enough to have fans all over California. So all these fans were popping up, and they were like thanking us, like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have Humble Sea, like, you know, on a Friday evening, or like on a Tuesday night, and I live in LA or Orange County, lots of SoCal people, and then also lots of beer like just being sent all over the Bay Area. So it ended up absolutely pulling us out of the hole that we thought we were going to be in, and we pivoted that weekend that we got shut down, and we released the beer on Monday. So we got shut down on like a Thursday or Friday, and then we released the beer that following Monday, and the speed meant that we were first to market. So all the beer fans who are into our style of beer in California knew that Humble Sea was releasing beer from Santa Cruz. So everyone was who was desperate and like wanted to go out or wanted to do something or just wanted to get drunk or whatever their thing was, they were like, oh, we know that we can get some of our favorite beer from Humble Sea while being safe and getting it from home. Our friend breweries throughout the state started to get this e-commerce model going 1 to 3 months later, which was a huge difference. In those 1 to 3 months, like we were able to actually grow and hire more people because we needed it. So that was super cool. It was really helpful. And then we just kept adding tanks throughout the pandemic. We kept adding tanks, and then now that we're open again, you know, things are happening. We started to pivot and use the funds that we made on e-commerce, which our profits that we made early pandemic for e-commerce was the most profitable time of our business, like hands down, history of our business. And we took those profits, and then we started to expand our footprint and then expand into other tap rooms. So we're up to 3 tap rooms right now, and we're working on 4. And then we also acquired another brewery in town to expand production. And all of that was kind of based on this early pivot. The cool thing about the tap rooms, though, is that we now have the data of where our fans live, because we were shipping beer throughout the state. So we know that there are pockets of our fans for whatever reason, like based on our accounts or based on the beer culture down there, or based on their love for Santa Cruz, whatever it is. We figured out, okay, we have a lot of fans specifically in the South Bay. We have a lot of fans in San Francisco. We have a lot of fans in the East Bay. And we have a lot of fans in pockets throughout LA and Orange County. There's like no fans in San Luis Obispo. There's like, you know, there's all this like cool learning that was happening there. We don't have fans in Monterey for some reason. It's like all north. So learned a ton there, and then that's where we're expanding our tap room. So our next expansion was Pacifica, which is a beach town that's close to San Francisco, to pick up on the San Francisco fans that we have, but not be in San Francisco, because that's sort of like off-brand for us. It's kind of like urban, or like more not urban. And then we opened up in the mountains, which we were also sending a ton of beer up there. That's also where the 3 co-founders are from. We're all from Ben Lomond and Brookdale. So yeah, just kind of following that data train. So that was hugely helpful. And I wanted to highlight the pivot thing and growth, because right now, with what's going on with the economy, it's pretty wild, and we're definitely going to need to pivot. And we're thinking and revisiting supply chain and prices and how we can do things differently, and how we can downsize certain parts of our business, and how we can, you know, grow into other sides of our business. So it's definitely been a fun ride. And I'm trying to think if I would recommend starting a brewery, and I don't think I would, but I have no choice. I already started it, so that's been quite a delight. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There's no like, you know, like, okay, and here's how you can solve all your problems. That's the end. So I'm super curious what your questions are. Question.
How did you market your e-commerce site?
That's a good question. Well, we've been building our email lists and our social media followings since the beginning, and just like slowly hacking away at it and trying to adopt platforms early and that kind of thing. And so by the time that we were pivoting to e-commerce, we had, you know, a pretty sizable following. We have about 1 million impressions a month across our platforms. We have, I mean, the amount of followers that we have, it's pretty interesting actually. Like early on, it was like, oh man, we got 1,000 followers. This is unbelievable. But then like you look at some of this data, and I looked at our Google Maps data, and we get put into Google Maps 44,000 times a month. So there's like some people online who know about us, and so we just tried to tap into it.
So say the LA Orange County people that you have who are your fans.
Yeah.
Did they?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question.
Did they come to the tasting room and sign up for something? I mean, how did you tap into the markets outside of Santa Cruz? Because I live right by Humble Sea, and
Yeah.
every time I drive by there, it is packed. So I know it has a local following, but I'm just wondering how you got to these other markets, especially Southern California.
Yeah, a weird, totally. So we have a organic marketing strategy to market ourselves outside of our immediate area where we have tap rooms, and it's mainly through collaborations with other breweries. So we're lucky enough that our beer quality is considered high. That was like the most stupidly humble statement. Like our beer is considered very good, like nationally. So we keep getting invited to festivals around the country and around the world that are invitationals of the top 50 breweries or top 100 breweries in the world. So when we are amongst the lineup of these people, we even get invited, we got ranked top 10 breweries in the country 2 years in a row in terms of quality of beer and experience and all that stuff. So when you're amongst them side by side with these brewers, you just try to learn everything you can. So we're like, hey, we love your saisons, your lagers, your pastry stouts, whatever the style is that they're famous for. And we say, can we learn stuff? And they say, yeah, we love your foggy IPAs. That's kind of what we're known for. Let's exchange knowledge. And so we exchange knowledge, we make 2 different recipes, and then they introduce us to their fans, we introduce them to our fans, and it's mutually beneficial. And it turns out that a lot of the friend breweries that we have that we've made beers with are exactly where our fans are that we ship to. So that was huge. And then we travel for festivals. So these invitationals that we're talking about, we go there and we pop up, and we usually try to at least have one owner and one brewer at every festival, so that if someone wants to learn more about the business or connect with our brand or whatever, we like throw an owner at them. And if someone wants to just geek out about our beer, we throw a brewer at them. And that way people can really, really connect and make this like special thing, because we're a tourist town and people love excuses to come to Santa Cruz, and beer tourism is growing and growing. And that's another reason how we've gotten so many cool collaborations with people in the UK, for example. One of our largest fan bases is in the Manchester northern region of the UK. And that's because those breweries love Santa Cruz. And so they're like, hey, we're coming out to California. Can we come visit and do like a beach thing? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. Come hang out. And then we exchange fans, and all of a sudden we have fans in Manchester. And we've been over there, and we had a New Year's Eve party this last New Year's Eve in Manchester. And it was Humble Sea, NYE Humble Sea in Manchester, and it was sold out. And it was like, it's mind blowing. It's like, what? And this is all through just making beer with our friends. So that's kind of how, yeah. We haven't done any paid advertising yet, but we're going to start thinking about that in terms of targeting things when we expand. And we're expanding into more Whole Foods at this point, and we're going to start targeting. I don't know how to do that, though. About to find out. Did that answer your question?
That was great, thank you.
Cool.
Very thorough answer.
Yeah, I tend to talk.
I'm curious how the sales and shipping has changed now that the breweries are open again. Are you still doing that? Is it still the majority of your business, or what does that look like now?
Yeah, totally. They have changed massively. So early pandemic, it was about 90% of our business. Now it's well under 10% of our business. And every Thursday, so this was yesterday, we have a finance call with our CFO, and we go through all of our numbers, everything for the week, every department, everything else. And yesterday we talked about how low our shipping sales are, which is just natural. I mean, people are coming to tap rooms or going to other places. So we brought up the thing of, we're not attached to shipping. Like, who cares about shipping? Like, who cares how we get our beer to people? It's just like how people want it. Like, we're in the service industry, so we're here to serve. And we talked about like, yeah, we're not making that much money on shipping, and we're putting a lot of effort. So we're probably going to drop our e-commerce program very soon and pivot it all into subscription. Because our beer subscribers, we have hot boxes and stuff like that where we send beer out once a month. Those are still running strong. So we're probably going to drop all one-off shipping programs and move everything into subscription and streamline it, which will then we can move labor from there into the logistics of getting beer to our tap rooms.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the subscriptions was included when you said 10% of sales at this point, or is that separate?
That's a good question. I don't know the percentage of.
Okay.
I can think about the math really quick here.
Just curious, like approximately.
Yeah. No, I think it'd be included. I think subscriptions is probably like 6-7% of our overall revenue.
Okay.
So it's still like tiny compared to what we were doing. We're also like, in terms of revenue and size of company, like subscriptions are running as strong as they ever have been, but revenue has grown in other places in the business, so they now occupy a much smaller portion of our revenue.
And what about the one-offs?
One-offs are way down.
Sales, so those went way down.
Way down.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
We were, I'll just throw out numbers. I mean, that's fine. March, April, May, June. So each month, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, we were doing from $250,000 to $450,000 of shipping sales. Now we're a month, probably doing 40, I think, of non-subscription sales. Yeah, it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
Which is cool. That's part of. That's it. Rebecca.
So I'm curious. So you had to hire a lot to deal with the shipping demand. Are you still at that same staffing level now, or with the drop off, have those positions pivoted to other things, or
Yeah.
has the lack of labor force sort of helped you? just what does that staffing look like now?
Yes. Does everyone know Rebecca from Economic Development, by the way? Yeah, round of applause. The best. So Rebecca's from Economic Development. We go to Economic Development for any of our issues with the city or to figure out what the heck is going on with how to get through red tape. It's always Economic Development first for us because we're very, very bad at red tape language and we don't understand how to decode that. So Rebecca decodes it and says it to us in a way that's extremely approachable. So thank you.
Services.
Yeah, exactly. We've continued to grow with our hiring throughout. And what we did is essentially we shifted our front of house staff to shipping during that time. And then as we opened up our tap room again, we kept that same amount of staff on shipping and then hired more to fill in for tap room. And then as we've grown into each tap room, we've hired more and more. And kitchens are lots of staff. To put it into perspective, our team for the Swift Street tap rooms, 12 to 15 people, depending on season. And our team for the tavern up in Felton is 45 people. Yeah. So I don't know about that business model. Cool. Other questions?
Actually, I have one. Frank, I've always been curious. It's probably you. Who's the person or people behind the names of the beers?
That's a good question.
Spot on and always.
Yeah. Does everyone know Bryce, by the way?
Either way.
Bryce, marketer extraordinaire, and does lots of different media. So of course, if you're asking a marketing question, which makes sense. We have about 6 new one-off beers a week that we package and release. So from a new recipe to a brand new name to a brand new label design, where we have sort of a one-off iterative model for a couple of reasons. One, it's interesting for the drinker. They're like, hey, what's new, what's different? 2, it helps us get better at brewing beer much faster because we get to try all these new ingredients and recipes. And 3, it just keeps all of us really entertained. I'm a designer, I'm a co-founder, so I get to make a bunch of labels. Business should be fun if we're starting our own business. So naming is obviously a huge part of it. You have to come up with 6 like creative, unique names that are on brand every single week. So in the beginning, I was just thinking of all of them, and it was like terribly stressful. It was just like way too much work. I don't really believe in like spontaneous creativity where you can like sit down and like be creative. I think it just comes when it comes. So we created a system. So we have a Slack channel called Beer Names, and everybody in the company has access to it, and they just throw out names whenever they want. And in the beginning, people were throwing out random names that had nothing to do with our brand, and so I spent a lot of time giving feedback of like, love this name, but you know, it's way off brand because of these 3 reasons. And then now people are giving names that are incredibly on brand. They're so creative, and I haven't named a beer myself in 2.5 years probably. So then we go through once a week, we comb through the ones that we think are good, then we throw them through the internet engine, and we figure out which ones aren't taken by other breweries, and then we create artwork for them. So it's kind of like systemized creativity.
Follow-up question, out of all of them, what's your favorite name and brand name?
You're wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm wearing them. Yeah, Socks and Sandals is that was one that I came up with when I was in Hawaii, and I was drinking a longboard lager, and I was like, I don't want to be the next touristy freaking Hawaii island-based, like, I don't want to be that brewery. Like, longboard lager, like, I love Kona, like, good for them, but like, we're not that. I want to make fun of tourists. And so it was like, what do tourists do? Socks and sandals, and then we went into this whole rabbit hole of that. And it's just kind of a meta thing, because tourists are our primary demographic at the brewery. They know it, we know it, we love them. We make fun of surf culture as well. We're surfers. That's just part of it, you know? Like, we kind of like to keep it lighthearted. I guess socks and sandals, yeah.
Very cool.
Hi Frank, I'm Kara with Pacific City Company. We haven't met, but we're new neighbors.
We are new neighbors.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Hey.
One of my questions is, well, I have a lot because you're super engaging, but like how, when you talk about on brand, like how did that kind of come together for you guys initially, and like how do you keep that sort of brand stream running through your growth?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with my design studio called Good Knife, we brand other people, and we go through this whole process, and it's strategic, and then we finalize the process with this entire brand book and its guidelines, and we say, this is your law, don't break it, don't go off brand, good luck, I hope for the best. And with Humble Sea, because we are the brand, we decided to take a completely different approach. We've never made a brand book, we never will make a brand book, and we don't have brand guidelines. And we do all our shit in marker. So like, we draw all this stuff, and we just do dumb doodles and stuff like that, because like, it's a passion thing. If you're starting a brewery, like there's a lot of hard parts about starting your own business, especially like a brick and mortar, physical goods, supply chain oriented business. A lot of that stuff's hard, so everything else should be like awesome in my opinion. So in terms of honing in our brand, it was just over time. It was, hey, we're gonna start with this logo, this philosophy, and this color palette, and then we're gonna iterate from there. And then as we continued to grow, our company culture needed to grow, and we needed to actually figure out, okay, what are our values though? Like, you know, we're 3 owners and 10 employees at this point, but very soon we're gonna be 50, 100 employees, whatever it is. Right now we're 110 employees, so we need to actually like figure out a bit of a structure for something where someone comes in, they're new, they don't know our brand, they don't know anything about Santa Cruz, whatever it is. How do we explain ourselves? And so that's actually where we brought in David Dennis, which you're talking about brand values next.
Yeah, over at Rosie's. So I'm going to talk about their brand values as well as our brand values and how that's driving the whole culture of the business. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we were like, David, you got to help us. You're very good at the strategic side of brand value, marketing, company building. And we did this whole exercise with the whole team, and we figured out like what are our actual values. And then we pinned them down, and we're like, okay, these are our 5. And they're fun ones, like that are actually us, right? Like kooky and righteousness and those kinds of things, you know? And that way we can kind of explain it. In terms of the visual brand, there's two things. There's like here's our logo in 4 colors that you will only ever see if someone like Whole Foods has access to our brand. However, if we're doing our brand and we're handling it, which is our cans, all we have is a feel. So we've invented characters that are gender neutral and they're non-binary. They have no skin tone associated with them, and those are the characters that we tell our brand through. And then the names, like how is that part of our brand? Are we calling ourselves out? Are we self-aware enough? Are we being too serious? Those are the questions that we ask ourselves. And then color palette, it's like we don't have a color palette at this point. We just have a feel of pastel, and that's it. As long as it feels light and lighthearted, then like we're good. Try whatever you want. And then sometimes we come out with a can and we're like, that did not work. Good thing we're doing 6 more next week, you know? Yeah, I mean, that was it was the internal answer of like, we don't have brand guidelines specifically for that reason. Does that answer your question? Do you have follow-up on that?
No, it was great. I don't actually. That was great.
Okay, cool.
The creative part of it is so inspiring. Like how you just kind of, in a sense, you guys have just gone with how you felt and like it's been so successful. So awesome.
Yeah, I think as well that ties into marketing. Whenever we talk about marketing, there's no secret sauce besides like it's us. It's like however it feels. And when I stopped writing all the copy for our newsletters and all of our social media, all that stuff, when I had to translate the voice, it was just my own voice. It was just how I talk. And it was like, sometimes I swore, and sometimes I was overly psyched on a hop that nobody understood. And like, I didn't care, because like that was my voice. But then when I had to scale it up, it was teaching through like storytelling, and it wasn't, here's how the Humble Sea brand voice sounds. And so that transition period was 6 months instead of like 2 weeks. It was like, no, we're writing everything together, because I don't know how to explain this.
Right, yeah.
And then now that voice gets trained to other copywriters. And I don't do that. I have no idea how that gets done. Yeah, our head of marketing does that, and she's a lot better at codifying things. Like, I'm much more of the this is sort of the general feel direction thing, and I don't really know beyond that. Hey, Matthew.
Is that same as the visuals as well? I mean, like, did it take 6 months for you to transfer, like, that thought pattern to visuals, or are you still like, every can is the Frank Scott Krueger can, or?
Yeah, no, actually, it's the exact same process.
Okay.
Yeah, originally it was all my own doodles and marker drawings and that kind of thing. The reason why I chose marker as a medium for our illustrations is because my background's in tech design, and everything's clean, everything's corporate, everything's vector-based graphics, and it's just great. But I was like, if this is my thing, I'm gonna just draw. Like, I'm gonna go back to like what I studied in college. So I did that, and then it was about 6 months of co-designing cans together and co-illustrating everything. And then after that, now the cans are better than I could do, for sure. And the copyright is better than I could do. Everything in the brewery is better than I can do, because every single person doing their job is way better than how I originally started it. And it's funny, like Mark, our head of logistics, who came from Yeti, and he was in charge of logistics for Yeti, and he was opening logistical centers. He moved the logistical center of Yeti from Texas over to Memphis because of some weird shipping logistics, but he's really good with logistics. And he was so frustrated last week that our canning schedule he's like, it's almost up to 20% of our canning schedule is delayed by up to 1 day, sometimes it's hours, from what the brewers estimate on the brew sheet. And I was like, Mark, 20% is a joke. We never canned anything on time when I was handling logistics. Like, if 20% bugs you, like, this is not the right company. Like, 20% is the biggest win. Thank you for telling me that. That just made my day. So yeah, that's kind of that was a total tangent.
So you guys pivoted during COVID and it was successful. Is there a time that you pivoted or tried something new that it wasn't successful, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we do ideas and concepts for beers all the time where we think like, hey, this is going to be like the next best thing, the next best trend. This is incredible, and we'll release it. And it's an absolute dud, like just like to an unbelievable level. And we're like, whoa, we have way too much beer, and we don't keep beer. We don't sell beer wholesale past 2 weeks of its canning date. Even though bigger breweries, they'll sell beer up to 3 months, 6 months, even up to a year after canning date. But we really like fresh beer. So at that point, if it doesn't work, we'll just dump it off and we'll write it off, because we want fresh beer and the best beer possible in people's hands. It actually costs a lot of money. Like when we're so serious about curating like the liquid side of our brand, that our worst fear is that someone has a Humble Sea beer for the first time and it's not the best beer they've ever had. And if that Socks and Sandals is 6 weeks old versus 6 days old, that's a huge difference in a hoppy beer. So if inventory sits literally longer than 2 weeks in our hands, we'll dump it. And then if we taste something out of the tanks, and fermentation's a bit wild, so sometimes fermentation can go into a path and produce off flavors. If there's something that went wrong in fermentation, whether it's our fault or not, we'll just dump the whole batch and write it off. So in a batch is, we're not talking like a couple grand, it's like 40 grand down the drain. And we're like, we don't give a shit, because the breweries that aren't good editors, just like writers, the breweries that aren't good editors get shitty beer out into the market. That was also a tangent based on what you...
It's just quick like iterations, basically.
It's quick iterations, and it's being open to axing something. So a good example is the tavern. So the Humble Sea Tavern is our highest revenue right now out of all of our locations, but it's our lowest profits because of how large that staffing center is. So we're just following the data, and if that doesn't work, like we're just gonna have to pivot. We're gonna change the tavern into something completely different. Even though we love how the tavern is, and in my opinion, it's our best brand experience. For sure, it's our best brand experience. But if we can't turn a profit eventually with that thing, even though it's bringing in the most revenue, then like just get rid of it, or change it.
Yeah.
Drop all the food and just do beer, whatever it is. Are we over time? Are we good?
Is that the best experience at the tavern because of your personal feeling, or just overall? Because like, okay, that's like my home, kind of, in San Lorenzo, Valley.
Yeah.
Or do you just feel like, just as a whole, it is just our best experience?
Yeah, well, I think part of the tavern is extremely off-brand. So when I say best brand experience, I think it's the most immersive.
Okay.
So you have to get to the tavern somehow. So the experience of getting to the brand experience of getting to the tavern starts when you get in your car, and you have to pass trees on the way, and then you have to pass like old Western facades on the way, and you have to it's like preparing you. Like it's like such an amazing brand experience that also exists in our other locations. Pacifica, West Side, it starts if you're anywhere near Westcliff, that kind of thing, but it's longer to the tavern. And then when you get to the tavern, you see the building, and you're like, this is the oldest thing here. This is literally the oldest historic building there. And then you walk inside, and you're like, oh, this has been restored. And the whole thing is, and I'm not even talking about the beer and the food yet, and the service side of our brand and all that. So yeah, I think it's the best brand experience we have and the most off-brand experience we have. We have maybe time for one more?
Yeah, like 5 more minutes, so if you have any more, if not, we don't have to extend it.
So it sounds like you're expanding right now in California. Do you guys have plans to expand throughout the US or into other countries, like you mentioned Manchester, right? Is that something that's on the horizon for you, or?
Yeah, in terms of tap rooms, we are still looking for more tap rooms, and we've got our eye on one that we're hoping to get into and sign the lease very soon, elsewhere in the Bay Area, which we haven't signed the lease yet, so I can't say anything.
So are you sticking to California, or are you basing this off of those sort of hotspots that you discovered through the e-commerce model?
Yeah, so we're sticking to specifically the Bay Area.
Okay.
One, because of the e-commerce model and the hotspots that we saw, a lot of that beer was shipped just within the Bay Area. Two is we don't want to expand too fast. We want to expand in concentric circles because of how difficult it is logistically to learn a new location and how to get beer there and to run a new, essentially like unit of the business. And if that thing is happening in LA, which we actually looked on the Redondo Beach Pier for a spot. Like I was in a spot negotiating a lease because we have a lot of fans in Redondo Beach for whatever reason. I know nothing about Redondo Beach. In the pier, it was all on brand, all this stuff. But managing a unit that far away felt like we were stretching ourselves too thin. And we're still a small team and a small brewery in the grand scheme of things. In Santa Cruz, we're considered a large brewery at this point. In terms of manufacturer, we're the largest by, I think, 3 times. But compared to our friends at other breweries, we're like half the size, a quarter the size. Yeah, so we're gonna keep it concentric circles for now, for the foreseeable future. We also never had a plan to even open a second tap room, so like all of this
As it comes.
changes. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
And thanks everyone. Thanks for the questions.